This is the next video in the series Creating Dailies in Davinci Resolve for Avid Media Composer. We are now at step 7, syncing audio in Avid Media Composer. So in previous videos, I created dailies, I brought video dailies into Avid, I organized the metadata, I also imported the audio from that day into Avid and organized the metadata for that as well. I really emphasize that the metadata organization that I showed in those videos is really important, so I would definitely recommend that you have a look at that before you move on to the next step of syncing the audio and video. So in the case of this production, this was a scripted short film that was shot. They did it in a really organized way. I was very lucky. All of the camera metadata came through properly. All of the audio metadata came through very well from the sound recordist. And I also know, and I can see that they also recorded time code in the audio and in the video that should be pretty close to matching up. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be syncing the audio and the video based on the embedded timecode information in the audio and the video. Sometimes we're not very lucky and we don't have matching timecode in audio and video, and then what we're going to have to do in those cases is use a slightly different method to sync them up. But I'll probably just cover that in another video because here we have the basics of how to do it when the timecode matches. This is my preferred workflow, my best practice steps. You may have a slightly different way of doing it, but if you've never done it before, you can try doing it this way and see how you like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new bin that is going to be my syncing bin, and I'll just call it sync. And the reason for that is that I just find it really easy to keep track of what I'm syncing if I move it into a different bin in order to sync it and then move it back later to the bin that it lives in. So I have a sync bin, and what I'm going to do to start off is I'm going to sync everything that was on card 1. So I can just select all of my clips and I'll just move them into the sync bin for now. Then what I also need to put in that bin is any of the audio that I think might be matching up with this video. Now with my audio, I actually have all the audio from the entire day. It's not divided up based on cards because the sound recordist was using a different system. So I'm not always entirely sure how many clips I'm going to need, but for the sake of doing this, I'll just take them all and move them all into the sync bin. So now in this bin, I have a whole bunch of video files and a whole bunch of audio files that I'm pretty sure are going to match up somehow. Now, I don't exactly know how they're going to match up yet, and the great thing about Avid is that it's going to be able to actually do a lot of the work for me. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to select all of the clips. This is everything in the entire bin. I just Control A or Apple A, selected everything. And I'm going to go up under the clip menu and I'm going to use auto sequence in Avid. So I'm going to click auto sequence. And now what it does is it actually builds me a sequence, which you can see right here, which lays out all of the video and audio clips based on their source timecode. So as you can see, they are kind of grouped together based on when they were shot. We've got, in some cases, we've got a video file here, but like an audio file that is a little bit before it. And that's because although they had the time code pretty close, you can see that the audio time code and the video time code don't match exactly. They're all a little bit off. But because of the way that Avid lays this out in the sequence, it's really visually easy to see approximately which clips should go with which audio clips because they're pretty close together. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to use this sequence as a sync map to show how all of my audio and video are going to go together. So I can just actually start moving some stuff around on this sequence in order to get everything to line up the way I want it to. And the way that I like to do it is I like to go into trim mode because then you can just slide everything around the way that you need to in order to get it kind of matched up. And I would say that the best practice when you're moving stuff around is to try to leave the video clips where they are in the sequence because they're going to be sitting at a time code that matches their start time code. And the audio stuff you can move around a little bit and get it to match up. So then what I'm also going to do is I'm also going to turn on the waveforms so that we can have a better idea, so we can see right here. I can just see this is where the clapper's at, and if we play it back we can actually hear the clapper go. And then we're going to look and we're going to be like, well, where's the actual clapper in the video? And we're just going to scroll around and we see this person holding it. Okay, oh, there it goes. So I'm going to find that point where the clapper claps. Boom, it's right there. I'll pop a little locator on actually just for the sake of keeping things organized. And then I'm going to drag my audio, and I could use a number of different methods to drag this. I could use this one of the segment tools, which is like the red arrow, to move it around. But the reason that I'm moving it this way is that what will happen is I'll drag this one, and then all of the clips farther down the line will drag back or forward an equivalent distance. So it'll actually help get all of the clips closer to their matching point with the video. So we're pretty close here. Just a couple frames off maybe. So there we go. So now I'm going to play this, and I'm going to visually check and listen to see that the clapper's in the right place. And then what I'll probably also do, if I can, is look for some other clues in the footage that what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing match up. And I'm going to do that for every clip. So now I'm going to jump to the next clip. And because I moved everything all at the same time, this clapper clap should be pretty close. Boom. There it is. It's already right on. And then I'm going to jump ahead and I'm going to look at some of these other ones. You know, I moved four or five video tracks. I didn't move the bottom one. So I'm just going to like tweak these a little bit so that they all kind of match up. And I'm just generally going to go through the process of manually checking every single clip. And I'm just going to do this for each of the clips on this sequence. As you can see, there are some offline audio tracks, so I'm just going to delete them from the sequence, and anywhere where they've accidentally overwritten the audio, I'm just going to re-drag out the audio files using trim mode. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to follow this process, and I'm going to tidy up this whole sequence until I have a sync map that I like. Okay, so now I've kind of gotten rid of all of the extra bits and pieces that I don't need. I've gone through and I've spot checked each of the clips to make sure that the audio and the video matches. I've done that by checking both the clapper and also by maybe checking some dialogue.
Well, cut out then.
Now, the worst case scenario, if you sync something improperly, you can always go back to your sync map and resync it. So it's not the end of the world, but I like to try and make sure that it's in pretty good shape on the first try. Now, sometimes we'll see stuff like this where I can see that there's an audio clip, but there's no matching video. And so that would be a situation, you know, I can see there's like, can hear him speeding. So maybe this was something like room tone or wild lines, and this is where it would be handy to go and look at my continuity and script supervisor notes and to see if there was anything that they said about when there were some additional pieces of audio recorded. Or I can just listen to it. If I don't have notes, sometimes there aren't always notes, I can just listen. And I can hear in this case that there's pretty much nothing. It sounds like they were recording, you know, the tone of the exterior outside in order to have a good ambience for the dialogue track. So there's no actor speaking, there's no lines. So I understand why there's no video here. So you can just go through and you can check all of your clips and cross-check it with what you're expecting to get from your production and make sure that you're not missing anything. Now, at the end of this sync map sequence, I have a whole ton of audio that doesn't have any matching video. That's because, as you'll recall, I only moved the video from the first video card into this sync bin, and I'm just going to do one video card at a time instead of doing them all at once, just because I find that to be more manageable. So since we're just doing video card one, I'm just going to remove all of this extra stuff because I'm not going to need it until it's time to do card 2. So now I have this really great sync map. I'm going to go through and I'm going to create sync maps for my other 2 cards. I'm going to take everything in my sync bin, all of the video that I use, I'm going to put it back in the bin that it came from, just because that's a better way to stay organized. Okay, so I've now created reliable sync maps for each of the video cards. We can see card 1, we see all of our video and audio lined up on a clip-by-clip basis as we go through the sequence. The next step that we want to do is we want to actually tell Avid that these clips belong together. Right now, Avid just thinks of these as sequences with some audio and some video. It doesn't have a way of recognizing that these are actually clips that we want to marry the audio and video together and create new subclips. So this is what we're going to do. And this is a little bit time consuming. If you have some keyboard shortcuts set up in your Avid keyboard settings, it'll probably make the process go a lot faster for you. And I know that a lot of assistants who do this on a regular basis have very, very specific key combinations that they've worked out so that they can move through this quickly. I'm just going to show what the actual steps are in doing it, so that if you're doing it for the first time, you won't get lost. So what we're going to do first is for each little clip that we have on our timeline, we're actually going to create an Avid subsequence. And I'm going to do that by selecting an in point and an out point. So typically around the clip, I'm going to select all of the audio and video tracks that I'm going to use, in this case, that's all of them. And then I'm going to click a Create Subclip menu item. Now, if you don't have this button configured, or if it doesn't appear anywhere on your interface, you want to go up to your command palette. This is going to have all of the possible keys that you can use in Avid. You want to make it an active palette, and you want to look under the Edit tab. And there's a button here that's a Make Subclip button. And that's a little bit of a misnomer because it actually works to create either a subclip or a subsequence, depending on what part of your interface is activated. So if I had just a clip activated and I set in and out points and I used this button, it would make a subclip, which in this case I don't need. But if I have my sequence activated and I click the subclip button, it will create a subsequence, which is in fact what I want. So I recommend that you either map this to your keyboard, to a short key, or that you at the very least put the button maybe somewhere in some of your tool palette below one of your monitors, just so that you have easy access to it while you're doing this, because you're going to have to do it a bunch of times. So I actually have it mapped to my keyboard, which I find really, really quick. And that's going to create a subsequence, which if I open it up, it's a very, very clean, tiny little subsequence with just this video and audio. Okay, and then what I'm also going to do is, because this is my best practice, is I'm going to rename the subsequence based on the slate information. And I'm actually going to go through and I'm going to do that for every single clip on my sync map. Okay, so I've now gone through the process of creating a subsequence for each of the synced audio and video clips on this sync map sequence. And the last step that I have to do is I want to turn these from subsequences into actual clips so that the audio and video will live together as I'm editing. And if I bring stuff out of sync, it will show me on my edit timeline and all of that great stuff that we're used to having when we have synced audio and video. So all I have to do is select all of the subsequences that I've created. And then under the clip menu, I'm going to click Auto Sync. And then Avid is going to say, okay, boom. And it just turns them all into subclips. So now I have a subclip with matching audio that I know matches because I went specifically on my sync map and I made sure that everything matched up. And that is how you sync audio and video in Avid. So now I can go through the process of organizing these subclips in whatever way I want. And typically I would maybe create a different bin for each scene. And then by the end, I will have bins based on each scene, and each of those bins will have these synced subclips in them. It's important to note that the original master clips, the unsynced files, still totally exist in these original bins that I created: card 1, card 2, card 3, and all of my audio files. So this is a really, really good way to keep track of all of your metadata, because I can edit with the synced clips. I've changed the names of the synced clips to reflect, for example, the slate information. But if I ever want to match back to my original clips, all I have to do is just go into my synced clips and do a match frame. And it'll actually take me back to whatever the matching master clip is. And this is a really good way to keep track of everything and make sure that all of your data stays untouched. And when you come to the process of finishing your project, all of that data will be available so that when you want to match back your video files to your high-res video, when you want to match back your audio files to your original broadcast wave files so that your sound mixer can work in Pro Tools and remix the audio, you have all of that data and it's all linked together and it won't get lost. So I hope that this was a useful series. I know that when I was first starting out, it took me a long time to learn this workflow, and there was a lot of trial and error that I had to go through to figure out what the best workflow was and what would be the most solid way to maintain metadata for the end of my project. And this workflow that I've shown you is one that I've done for a number of years, and it pretty much always works. So hopefully it was useful. If you like the video or the video series, please feel free to share with other people. Feel free to subscribe. I try to put up videos anytime I have a workflow related to editing or post-production that I find kind of useful, that I think it might be cool for other people to also learn about. And if you have any suggestions for things that you want to learn about, let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do.